fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
We forgot to talk about who was doing the intro again, so I suppose I'll just crack on and do it. Shall I? Welcome to Midweek Metals with Matt Geiger, episode 10, and straight into it. Matt, how are you? So looking very colourful this morning.
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Yeah, great. Things are escalating all the time, aren't they? Yeah.
Fun stuff. Fun times.
So you're busy. What's any changes in the money markets and what's happening?
I mean, let's take a look. I mean, we're still pretty early in the, it's only about 8 here. Let's take a look at what the gold. I mean, gold and silver have been moving up a little bit.
We're at 75, right? With silver?
It's like 80. Yeah, 75, 76, 75, 76. Nothing to talk about. I think that this is kind of that calm before the storm sort of period of time. Very good buying opportunity for people. Anybody out there that's thought about getting into silver or gold, these are going to be levels that might hold here for, could be a couple days, couple weeks, but, I wouldn't expect much longer than that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing some serious price increases here. Probably by, as we've been predicting by the summer should, probably be hitting, $200, we think. We'll see. We don't have a crystal ball, right? We can't promise anything. We can't, sit here and tell anybody with a straight face, what gold or silver prices they're just going to do what they're going to do. But I think that the higher they go, the more incentive there's going to be for people to realize, that there's other stuff going on. The reason why they're going up is because there's this other stuff going on that's going to push people to say, hey, you know what, get my money out of the Federal Reserve System and get it into something stable that's moving upwards steadily. And unfortunately, people realize this when it's already happening. It's a time like right now that you really want to be buying up as much of this stuff as you can.
Yeah, well, apart from advising people to buy silver a year ago, I don't think there's any better time to buy it now, because what we saw with that surge going up to, 130, whatever it was going to cost me to buy an ounce here. And this correction and come down, it's just hovering, isn't it, at the moment? I think it's giving everyone an opportunity just to get in.
Yeah, I think the white hats are in control of what the prices are going to do. I really believe that. I think that the banks have lost all their power over this stuff, and I think now it's just going to be a matter of people recognizing, okay, we need a robust gold and silver market. We need very high prices, because if we transition into that, we need a market cap in the tens and tens of trillions of dollars in order to be able to cover what that economy might look like. So it's very important that silver and gold prices get much higher, because of course we're going to need it to move systems.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, and, I'd like to kind of have this little conversation with you, like as if you were my advisor. I'm totally okay with doing this on air. So, unfortunately, very unfortunately and sadly, we lost George's mom, but we did, come into a little bit of money. So we're looking at this and saying, well, what do you do? What do you do with a small inheritance? It wasn't like huge, but
Sure.
It's a nice amount. And it's like, well, what do you do? Do you just keep it in the bank? Clearly, none of us believe that that's a good use. I mean, even in the event that we don't believe that the banks, and all the uncertainty with it is going to happen, even in the best case, what are you making on your money? Like, I look at my bank account every once in a while when I just keep a running balance, to pay bills, and I get like a whopping $1.
Yeah.
Like, so right there, you're just looking from an investment standpoint. Doesn't make sense to keep this money in a bank. You could take your money and keep it under the mattress, right? That's always an option, to take it and, just keep the cash and whatever, but it's not doing anything. I mean, you might be a little more secure than having it in a bank, but everybody that has money wants to see it appreciate somehow and make money on your money. So I come to you and I have an amount and I say, let's just say tens of thousands as opposed to hundreds, right? What would you say to me?
Sure. Well, first off, I definitely have to say I'm not a financial advisor. I don't give financial advice, but I am a critic of this. I think of myself less as a gold and silver dealer and more of a critic of the system, right? So I look at this stuff from a complete opposite perspective than most people. Like you point out, like a money market or a CD. You'd be lucky to make 1 or 2%.
Right.
Same thing with bonds, right? Bonds are probably where this whole problem is going to originate from in the coming crash. The school bonds we talked about, I think, on the last episode, where these school bonds are coming due, and they're going to have to be, and these things are going to be completely defaulted upon. It's going to bring cities like New York and these different places to a screeching halt. But these are kind of low yield, low interest rate, kind of safe places to put your money, or you think it's safe. But I mean, just compare that if you had your money in silver over the last couple of years. Your money would be, what's a silver eagle worth today? $85. You're probably 84, 83, somewhere in there. So, I mean, do the math. You probably would have been buying in the mid 20s 2-3 years ago, and you would have effectively tripled your money. And at the same time, you're getting something that I don't even really care about the big gains that I get on my silver or my gold. It's more that it's a bridge to the new system. It's something that I know is going to exist on the far side of this. How the system collapses, what happens with the system. Look, we could have a 3-day marathon of an episode talking about all the different scenarios that I see that could play out. The reality is that it's a bridge to the new system. So yeah, I would say you're exactly right. It's like, here you are inheriting a little bit of money, and it's like, where do you put it? Well, certainly, I guess bonds and, CDs or money market, sure, that's a place to put things, but you're stuck within the bank. You're at the mercy of whatever the banks do. I think gold and silver, especially silver, is going to be a much better place because, of course, I think silver has the potential to hit $200-300 by this summer, $500 by the end of the year. I mean, imagine that. So if you're buying silver eagles at 83 today, something like that. If you're buying a silver eagle at $83 today, well, if silver hits 500, what's the silver eagle then? You might have $700 silver eagles because the premiums to get it are $200. So I just tell people it's a great, for me, what precious metals was, it was a great savings tool. I was really bad with money in my early 20s. And I started buying predominantly silver because I didn't really, at that time, I didn't really make much money. So I didn't have gold was too rich for my budgets at that time. But it was a great savings tool for me, And I think people now, what they're poised with is they don't have that ability to buy over time now. Now it's like you got to do that purchase all at once. So when you see, $83 silver eagles, I would jump on that immediately. I don't think this stuff's getting any cheaper. Sure, could we see a dip down to 60 or something? Sure, but it's not going to last long. Plus, what are dealers going to do? You think we're going to sell at a loss? No, the premiums are going to go up.
Right.
So go ahead.
No, so I was saying, so let's pretend. Let's do a pretend session here. I'm your client, which I am, but a new purchase, and I send you. We'll just use a round number just for the sake of right. So say you're talking maybe about $25,000.
17,000.
What's that?
17,000.
17,000.
I was thinking of doing something a little more rich, like 25,000, but we do that. And I say, Matt, I want to get into, with this money, I want to invest in some silver eagles. So now what?
You just wire in the funds, we'll send you an invoice. You don't have to buy silver eagles. That's just what I recommend. And just to be clear to people, I have no financial incentive to sell silver eagles versus anything else. I make the same commission no matter what. Right. To me, it's like, as long as I tell people, it's like, I joke with them. I'm like, as long as you have good things to say about me, that's all I care about. But no, I would, you would send in a bank wire and, or you could send in a check too, if you really wanted to. Mm-hmm. And, we'd send you an invoice. Okay. You're getting, if we did the math today, let's do some math on the phone.
I think this was fun, like to see, a transaction.
How is it? So you're talking 25,000. So today divided by 83. So you'd be getting 301.2 silver eagles, right? So maybe we'd throw in like a silver quarter or something, a pre-64 quarter to make up that 0.2. And we just ship it out to your house, right? We FedEx it, UPS it, signature required. It's fully insured. You don't have to worry about, if you don't sign for it, you're not responsible for it. And you'd get advanced tracking, right? So somebody in my office would send you, a tracking number. So you'd know, okay, today's Wednesday. You're getting it Friday via UPS between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. Okay. So you'll know it's coming, right? You'll know there's a window there that you have to be home, or some people, because they work during the week, they send it to their office, right? They'll know the day it's coming, and they just, wait for the UPS guy or the FedEx guy. You say, hey, that's for me. Boom, you sign for it and it's yours. It's in your possession.
So in terms of like volume, what is say 25,000 or 301 silver eagles look like? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, because people obviously being sent to their home, they want to know how much storage.
They come in little mint tubes of 20, right? 20. Some mints do 25. The US Mint does 20. They come in little tubes of 20.
Okay.
So 300 of them would be what? 15 tubes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So you get 15 little tubes of 20, and that would be yours. And that's pretty straightforward to store. That's not a big deal. You could store that in a small safe, or back in the back of a closet, or wherever you think is secure in your house.
Yeah.
A lot of my stuff I take off site. I don't keep a lot of inventory here at my house because, of course, I go on these shows, so I use a local depository for my stuff. People that I know that I've worked with for years. Dogtails getting in here. So, and if you have a local depository like I do, that's always an option. Some people, they're worried about a house fire or burglary or whatever. I can help people try to locate. It depends where you are in the country. Unfortunately, places like Florida and Tennessee, I've not seen any depositories down in those places. So it just really depends where you are in the country. We could try to look up, a place where you could store it securely off-site. You just pay a yearly fee for whatever it is you're storing, and boom, that's it.
Okay. No, that's great. And I guess when you start to get into, if you have people that have, really big amounts of money, then that's probably when it makes sense. I mean, unless they have a huge, safe or whatever, it makes sense when you get into those bigger, much larger numbers to actually keep it in a depository just for convenience sake.
Yeah, these are like security facilities. Like here, the one that I use, I'll just say the name because I don't care. It's a security facility, but there's a place here on Cave Creek Road called Mountain Vault. That's a great place. And what's beautiful about that place is we have a client, or several clients, many clients actually, that what we do is we do the hybrid IRA where we do the LLC. This is now, right? Cash purchases, there's no requirement for depositories, whereas IRAs there are. But what we can do is we can do an LLC for somebody with their retirement account. And I have some people here locally, because I deal with the local general public here in, Glendale and Phoenix, a local dealer. I'm not, not a call center out of Los Angeles. I'm actual, you could come to my shop. I have a little I'm old school, and we can do the LLC where it's the self-storage model, but because we're putting it at the vault here locally, those people are perfectly compliant with IRS guidelines because they're not holding it themselves. However, they have local access to it. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So that really is a big benefit to people that are in my, the greater Phoenix area, where we can use, and even if you weren't in Phoenix, you could use this vault, In other words, it's a private vault here that as long as your stuff is stored there, you're still compliant with IRS guidelines. Now, granted, I'm sure some of my clients are holding it themselves, which they're really not supposed to do. But you have that option, I'm really the only company that offers those very tailored solutions in that IRA space, whereas all these other companies are just very cookie cutter. It's just, one option, one way of doing it, and then on to the next one. So I really, I like to think that I have a lot more versatility in the way I do IRAs and 401ks and gold and silver than, pretty much anybody out there.
Yeah. So you just said something about a hybrid. So if somebody, just so I understand what that means, everybody else understands, is that when you are making a purchase and also rolling over an IRA, or within the IRA you could do this hybrid?
This is IRA to IRA. In other words, if you do a cash purchase like what you were initially talking about with the 25, yes, you have no requirement for any depository. You could go bury, I have clients that bury it in their backyard, quite literally. right? Not a bad idea if you know what you're doing, and right, your kids know about it, and it's not going to get lost there forever. Yeah, you could do, people do that. But I'm saying for IRA to IRA, that's sort of a solution that I've come up with, where it allows the client to have direct local access to their gold and silver while having it in an IRA. Whereas generally speaking, we have to send it to different depositories, major depositories, IRS-approved depositories throughout the country, which are also fine. I got no problem with that. But if somebody wants it local and they want to be able to access it on a moment's notice, locally here, we have that ability to do that for people. Somewhere else across the country, we'd have to maybe look up some other ways of doing it.
Yeah. I just think, again, this isn't financial advice, it's just my personal experience. If I would have left my IRAs in the bank, I wouldn't have made, the increase that I have over the last couple of years by having it in silver. And quite frankly, speaking transparency and honesty, I didn't know much about this when I started. So I was just guided into using a certain company, which in retrospect, I wouldn't have used, but it is what it is, right? You know what you know when you know it. I wish I had known you then, but
well, Tucker Carlson is he just did a special with the whistleblower from one of the gold companies out of LA. This guy worked for one of them. You could look it up. You'll hear the names mentioned. I don't want to say it because I'm not trying to face off on a lawsuit with these people. But this guy, young guy, he worked at one of the major gold companies that everybody hears of, and you hear sponsorships from them. And it's like, they're paying people like, I don't know, Rudy Giuliani, God knows how much they're paying that guy a month, 50, 100 grand a month. Where do you think that money comes from? It comes from having to charge astronomical commissions for somebody like that, and Mark Levin and all these different sponsors. I don't know who the companies they write. I'm just using random names, but, these guys make a fortune from these gold companies, and it comes and it's almost unfortunate because it's like, okay, Mark Levin, don't you know that these people are paying a huge premium for trusting in your name and your reputation? And then you find out later. I mean, I see the statements from these gold companies out of LA, and I see what people have paid, and it's disgusting. And I think that if I had to guess, I think the feds are probably working behind the scenes, Department of Justice, whoever, and looking at what these companies are doing. And it is theft. I mean, there's no regulation on the commissions that people can charge you, which is why that's why I really, love when people come to me, is because they know that they can trust me not to do that. You know what I mean? I take a couple percentage points. That's my commission. Everybody's got to make money, but I don't want your grandmother's retirement account. You know what I mean? I don't want anything to do with that. I want to be able to, we go to these events, right? We have this event coming up in April, and we just got back from Threadfest. I get to look my clients straight in the face, have drinks with them, have a nice dinner with them, and they love me because their accounts are way up. I met one of my clients, her first name is Jana, and her account's probably tripled since working with me. And it's so great to go there and see these people and just know that, hey, we were able to make a living. The sponsor that she came in through made a living, and here she is tripling her money in gold and silver, and not paying that, not waiting for that tripling in those prices just to make her money back. Because that's what these companies do, and you don't realize it. They take you through some DocuSign at the end, and it just scrolls down. You just hit a signature, scrolls down all the important stuff that you never read, and next thing you know, you're locked in airtight to some legal agreement. And that's what these companies do. They get you right there at the last minute. They charge you sky's the limit for garbage products, and it's disgusting. So I just I always tell people is it's like. Even if you don't go to B, there's other good companies out there. I mean, I see, and I shouldn't give the guy a plug, but I will. But, even that guy, Kirk Elliott, he does a good job. He's not ripping people off. I know what he charges. He seems like a good guy. I mean, I find him very boring to listen to on shows, right? And I don't see him as one of us, as one of the, Q Patriots like I am. I've been following this since early 2018. Right. But he's a guy who I think does a good job. His philosophy is bars. Okay, fair enough. I personally, I mean, I could sell bars, and I do, but I think people should be investing in United States 1 ounce silver American Eagles. I think that's the way silver should be bought, and gold for that matter. So it's just my approach to it. But hey, people want bars or rounds or whatever. We carry it all. We have it all. But I really would just tell people, like, be very careful, even if you don't come to us to do gold and silver. Be very careful with these companies. because they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear. Yeah, we're going to charge you 5%. And next thing you know, the deal's done. You look at your account you look at your account 6 months later and see half your retirement account gone. And it's because some schmuck in some gold company took half of it in commission.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Elisa, what happened with the first company you used?
Well, okay, so again, I didn't know much. It's one of those companies. I don't know if I want to say the name, but I think we're talking about one of the very same companies, Matt, because that company was affiliated up, if you will, with a lot of the people you mentioned. A lot of these big names that affiliated, and so that's who I called, right? And so the process was easy enough. It's pretty no-brainer, right? But what did I know? I don't know anything about commissions. I didn't even know to ask a lot of those questions. And they're very smooth, and they have their script and their dialogue very smooth and very, and they focus. I would say they kind of distract you onto certain things that aren't really like the meat, like someone like you, Matt, would ask the questions you would ask. They get you more like, oh, it's safe and it's going to be in a depository. They kind of play a little bit on like the fear of the whole process. So I worked with them, but not knowing, I said to Matt when we started working with him, and I was like, hey, is just, I'm thinking relationship. I'm like, hey, can I move my, my silver account, if you will, over my IRA over to you, because I want to work with you and I trust you, and I'd rather whatever commission or situation you're benefiting from. And I think, Matt, what you said was it's not worth it, even though you sort of told me that I probably got ripped off a little bit by what the commissions were from the way you were able to read the statement. Is that right?
Yeah. In other words, if you've done it already, what's done is done. You've locked in whatever gold or silver price. So to move it, let's say you did want to move it to me, most likely you're either going to pay a fortune to ship that somewhere. It's going to be a lot of paperwork and a lot of back office work that I would have to charge for, even if it was just to cover my back office work, And, secondly is, generally speaking, you'd probably have to sell it, liquidate it, and then do a rebuy. And if you do a rebuy, the problem with that, because that's going to be the cleanest and easiest way to do it, the problem with the rebuy is that you're going to pay a loading cost. I pay over spot for gold and silver. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're going to lose money both on the sale of the stuff, and then you're going to have to purchase some amount over. Even if I did it for free, you're going to lose money. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just tell people, it's like, okay, if it's at, the Delaware Depository or, one of the depositories in Texas, it's fine. It's what's done is done. It's just, I really do hope the feds do crack down on these companies, because what these companies are doing to people is it's theft. It's glorified theft. And unfortunately, there's no regulation to really prevent somebody from doing that. And that's why I tell people, it's like, you're going to need somebody like me with honesty and ethics that's going to sit there and take a fair commission. I got to, like I said before, I got to make a little bit of money. But like I said, the way it looks for me, the way I make my money is, let's say a Silver Eagle right now is 83. What I would charge for an IRA is probably 85.50 for a Silver Eagle. Boom, I've made my commission. You don't even know I'm there. You won't even feel me. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I tell people. It's like, I can make my money through a couple dollar difference in the silver price. One and done, boom, we're good to go. We've made what we need to make. Client gets a great deal. And then on the cash purchase, I'm as competitive as anyone. And we will have our online store up very soon. We've just been dealing with our merchant that takes credit cards right now. They don't do online. So we only learned this after we built this very expensive website, online store that we're going to integrate into our current website. That's all done. We just have to integrate now. We have to get the new merchant integrate into that. And once we do, we'll have a page for you guys where, Elisa and Stu sign up, create a username, password. You could shop, 2 a.m. online and catch the price at that exact, after hours. So it's like, we're going to give people a really great format so that they can just come on, they can buy any time of day or night and lock in that price. And, they don't even have to call in. They can, and we're obviously always welcome to call in, but they can just do it right from, the comfort of their, cell phone or their computer at home, whatever, so it's going to be really, it's going to be great for everybody.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Stu, and I think when I rolled over my IRA, roughly, I'm going to guess it was probably at 25. So to your point, Matt, if I had to go through the trouble of moving it, right, I'm going to lose a lot of money. So so whatever. You know what? I'm a firm believer that God works in his ways and there's reasons and whatever, and you just move forward. But like I said, nonetheless, had I not moved it, even with the theft, I'm still making a lot more money than I would have if I left it in the bank. There's no, it's not even a comparison.
Yeah.
So, it's something to think about, especially if the predictions, not just you, but, other guys that are just as knowledgeable and been in this business for a long time are saying that it's going to keep going up. So to me, it's a bit of a no-brainer.
Well, I think right now with Trump, Trump taking over the Strait of Hormuz, which is hilarious, by the way. We're in total control, and you can see all the noise from the news and, oh my gosh, never ending war with Iran now, blah, blah, blah. You can see all this stuff is now going to completely backfire on the media and the people who ever doubted Trump. I don't ever doubt Trump for 1 second.
Yeah.
There's not 1 second I ever doubt that man. That war is going to be over here pretty soon. But I do think that there's going to be more escalations around the world. And I do think this is going to be the type of stuff that really starts to push the metals prices up. Because realistically, at the end of the day, we have to do what? We have to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
So I think, I was talking with Mark Messina yesterday. And Mark was talking to me, and he asked me, he says, what do you see happening? I said, I think what Trump's doing is he's dumping all these toxic assets, these derivatives and whatnot. I think he's dumping them onto the Federal Reserve's books, because the Federal Reserve, they're the buyer and seller of last resort. So at the end of the day, they have an unlimited budget. They could buy whatever they were going to buy the world and have it all under the control of the Fed. That's what the original plan was. So I think what Trump's doing here is he's taking all the toxic assets and he's dumping them onto the Fed because they have unlimited budgets to buy them. And I think what he's doing in turn is he's keeping some semblance, some stability in the banking system. Right. So this stuff's going to come to a head. And then I think at one final point, we're going to pull the rug out from everything, and we're going to see who the real enemies are. It'll probably be like a 2008 type of scenario. So I would definitely tell people it's like, get prepared for that moment. And I think gold, silver represents that. I think cryptocurrency, certainly that. I think, there's a good reason, I think, to own the ISO coins, whatever you want to call them, XRP, XLM, XTC, a whole slew of them. I think people should get a lot of that under their belt, get it off the exchanges, get it onto a cold storage wallet, and just try to save as much as you can, because, I see a big, we haven't had the financial event yet. That's going to be kind of the grand finale is going to be that big financial event. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. People are going to experience loss. Let me tell you, it's not going to be, oh, the money's mirrored and this, everybody's bank account's mirrored. I don't believe any of that. I think people stand to lose money, and they're going to.
Well, it's kind of, remember when you were a kid and you went to, your parents told you, hey, we're going to an amusement park today. Remember the butterflies you got?
Yeah.
You were like excited. I literally feel that way when we talk about this stuff, because we're not exactly sure when, we don't know the timing, but we're sort of like on the line of this really exciting ride, Hey, Stu, did you want to, sorry about the dog.
Oh, puppies. I got mine right here.
Yeah. Hold on, let me mute. I thought we would talk about what we were chatting about last night.
Your dogs are setting off my dogs.
Yeah, okay, right. She's just going to do that. It was quite funny because Elisa was on the phone the other night, and we were sort of doing a three-way conversation, and the dog was barking. She went, hang on a minute, and she went up. I thought she was going to put the dog out of the room, but no, Elisa went out of the room and left me with the dog barking. Yeah, I was sitting there going,
Elisa, right. Your dog set off my dog, so that was hysterical.
Oh, no, yeah. I know.
They started barking.
I saw a meme with the dog. I don't know if you saw this, Matt. The dog is like barking and barking and barking, and the owner's like, shut up, shut up, shut up. And then you see like a robber leaving the house, and the dog's like, all right, forget it. Like, we just were telling them to shut up, but sometimes they've been doing their job, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, because there's a lot of push now. I mean, we've all been prepared for 5, 6, 7 years for this, but a lot of people are starting to stock up on food again now. There's talk of lockdowns coming in. We want a lockdown. We want a tweet. We want the EBS to go off, and we want all that stuff. But whatever cabal is left and whatever we're seeing come out in the mainstream is that because of this oil shortage that I'm sure Trump and Putin and all that knew was coming, and they're all ready for. They've got ships full of oil sitting out in places and international waters and stuff already. But it looks like we are moving into something now where there's going to be a need for people to be prepared and stocked up, and all of it basically.
Well, the way I kind of see it is that we're isolating China, right? So we've really cut off that cheap oil from Venezuela to China. That's isolating China. And see, what people don't realize about China is that what the deep state, what the globalist plan was to move effectively our politicians and our power structure, like the board of the Federal Reserve. They were just going to move over to China and strip the American wealth and take it with them and move it over to the straight up communist Chinese. It's not a bunch of Chinese people that are in charge over there. It's really a bunch of white men who would have been in charge of communist China. That's really who's in charge. So what Trump's doing is he's isolating China in every single possible way he can, both through oil, but also through trading partners, right? We saw Trump reverse a lot of the trade deals that China made with other countries, and Trump decided, hey, we're going to make a deal with you and you're going to exclude China. So what Trump's effectively been doing over the last couple of years is he's isolated China so much to a point where their economy, I mean, it's probably at a screeching halt. I mean, I heard that there was protests there. I heard, you never really know because you don't know what's really going on in China. But I think that it's a lot worse than what the media will ever tell you. So I think really a big part of this was to defeat the globalists in China, right? And not the Chinese people, but the people. Think of the board of the Federal Reserve. Those people that were going to shift our wealth from the United States over to China. And we think it's just a bunch of Chinese people. It's not. It's a bunch of white men, white liberal men.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. It's never the average everyday people in these countries. We're just the poor slobs. Stu, I want to get Matt's opinion of what we did our impromptu video about last night and weigh him in on this. I think you're muted, Stu.
Yes, I was. We were talking to BB Maguire in an interview, and we were talking about this July the 4th date, and is it gonna all be wonderful after then? Or we were discussing maybe there would be a run up, and that would be the start to something unfolding. Anyway, I went to bed last night, an early night, and I started thinking 120 days. And we've all heard this stuff in the past about Nasara, Jassara, Trump, Sara, and a government shutdown of 120 days. And I was like, hold up a minute. Got the calculation between dates on the computer from July the 4th to the midterms, November the 3rd, 122 days. So including those days, that is exactly 120 days. So me and Lisa did a 30-minute video last night just discussing this, but potentially what if some sort of Nasara or some announcement is actually made on July the 4th? And then we get this whether Trump steps down, the military comes in, we get this run up to all the EBS coming out, and the midterms are some sort of new election. That's sort of what
we were, but we expanded on it. And the reason it came up is because during the chat on the podcast with BB, we were sort of saying, like, well, what if July 4th isn't the event day? What if that's the start date? Because Trump did say we have a whole year. And so we were just throwing out scenarios of possible near-death experiences, right? We've heard this over and over through the years. And we've thought about all these things, alien invasions and the money going away and Epstein files and all. But what if the near-death experience is Trump stepping down because he turns to everyone and says, well, now that we see there's been election fraud, I don't know if I'm the duly elected president, and we need to kind of figure this all out.
Right.
How much of a near death would that be for not only the people that are unawakened, but MAGA Trump supporters, right, who are still asleep, but they support,
right,
but also for the Trump haters, because what would be in the place of Trump? Not some liberal asshole Democrat, but the military.
Military, yeah.
We know the military is in control and all that, but they don't. How
Right.
scary would that be? And then who knows what the hell else they would bring forth? Maybe the banks do go down. Maybe you do have a zero balance. Maybe there is some kind of alien invasion. Like, it'll be very interesting now that that Stu did the calculation of this 120 days.
Yeah, that is interesting because, there was, I think, about 10 elections that just took place in smaller seats. They were just bragging about how the one in Palm Beach County where Trump lives, that just got flipped to a Democrat. They just won the election. And all these Democrats are just winning all these small elections in these local areas. But what we know is through the Gateway Pundit and the reporting there, this is all fraud. These are all fraudulent elections. These people didn't win anything. Okay, so they're already starting the fraud with these smaller elections. They're gonna throw everything that they can at these bigger ones coming up. Both I think Lewis is on June 2nd, which is scary. Yeah. I guess the rest are what, September, October, November, something like that. Maybe some over the summer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But these are all going to be, they're going to try to drag it out at the end. They're not going to allow these races to complete. I mean, even the last presidential election. I mean, some of the other elections that took place, they didn't get solved for 2 months. And of course, when they do that, the Democrat, of course, prevails. So They're going to throw everything they can at this. So we're probably going to probably need a redo of these upcoming elections, all of them, every single one of them, including what you could be right. Maybe even the presidential election. Like, hey, let's run the election again. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Because we know, according to Nassara, right, we've got this 120 days, and then there's going to be a new election in so much of those words to that effect. So how does it just end up from July 4th? It's kind of ironic that you've got this 120-day period from those two dates. But,
especially if Trump did step down and sort of like chaos ensued, and it was all the people with TDS that were crying to have him back.
Well, it's good that we know that. What do we know already? We know that we already have National Guard troops in every state.
Yep.
We have ICE, right? ICE could be part of election security.
100%. They
have the total authority to do so. So it's really going to be about straightening out elections. I mean, as Juan says, what Trump's really his legacy will be leaving us with free and fair elections and gold-backed money and real money, a real monetary system. That's really what it takes. If people can really choose who gets into these seats, I mean, the country would look very different if the true winners of these elections took place. Plus, I think you also need to make it so that, I'm seeing it with Lewis's campaign. It's like everything is just money. Like, unless you have money behind you, I mean, it is so difficult to get anybody worth the damn in office. You really got to get the money out of politics because, it should just be easy for the average person. Maybe what it looks like is, you put up your ideas. You don't tell people who the candidates are, but you put up people's ideas and you vote based on whoever's ideas these are. And at the end, you find out who the winner is, right? What idea and then they're obligated to live up to carry out whatever it is that they're promising, or at least, 90% of it. And if they don't, you have another election. You say, okay, well, you're not doing the job you intended to do and what you promised. You didn't stick to these ideas. You're veering off here. We need a new election. Right. So you could throw an election anytime you want if somebody's not living up to their standards. It shouldn't just be like, oh, you win an election and now you have this 4-year term. Or in the case of the Senate, some 6-year term. It's like, no, that's not the way it should work. You should be held accountable every single day. And hopefully what that'll do is that'll get, a lot of, some of the brilliant business people in this country to step up and start running. We need business-minded people to run this country.
We need what the Constitution prepared us for, in that it's supposed to be people, ordinary people, farmers at the time, and just going in, serving their time, right? It was basically a service, right? You're serving your time as part of, being part of the government, if you will, and then you get back to your life. So I think a big part of this is if they have term limits, how many people would really want to do this job if they knew they were only doing it for a couple of years or, 2 terms, 4 years, or there's not enough time to, how do I say, corrupt them, because to what end? You have someone serving 30 years, 40 years, 50, you know how much damage that person could do. If you're just going, it's almost like these countries that you have like you mandatory serving in the army for 4 years or whatever. You do it, you're done, you paid your debt, and then you get on with it. That's what we're supposed to do. And I think if we do get something to the effect like the Q phone or whatever it's called, like where I think people will start to be more concerned with what's going on locally. That's really what we need to see. Like most people don't know about these school bonds and all this other stuff. They don't know what's going on locally. I think that's where the push has to come into these communities, because if everybody's worried about their own community, what else is there to really worry about? It trickles out.
Well, Flynn says it best, right? A local impact has a national impact, and I totally agree with that. And I think you need to make it so localized that it's impossible for them to infiltrate on every single local level. The reason why we got to infiltrate is because everything became so nationalized and so globalized. And I speak on behalf of the banks too. Look at our banks. Banking should go locally. What I always tell people is the way banks really should look like is, if you ever watch the movie A Wonderful Life, which I always bawl out crying at the end.
Yeah.
That's the way banking's supposed to work. It should be a community bank.
But isn't that how it used to be? Like, it started, even though you had the central bank coming in, it's only within maybe the last 40 years or so, 50, I'm not even sure, I'm not an expert on this, where all those local banks went away, mergers and takeovers, and where you'd deal with a banker for all, hey Joe, hey, and you had that relationship. And they show it even in the movie. If you look in the movie, I think it was Best Picture in 1948, if I'm not mistaken. It was about the three guys who come back from war, the best years of our lives. And one of the guys is a banker, and he comes back into his job, and they show you like how the banker at that time was looking at the individual coming in for a loan. And the argument is basically, I don't have that much collateral. What I have is my sweat equity. I have my desire. I have my plan to build whatever it was, a business or whatever.
Right.
And that's why I need the loan. If I had enough money, I wouldn't need a loan,
Right.
So, and he makes that argument about how we have to support these people.
Yeah.
And so that's how I guess it was in these local communities, like, Bedford Falls, like where they did. So yeah, it's just gotten so.
Well, what's got it, look at the 2008 crisis with the mortgage-backed securities. Here it is. I didn't own a house at that time. So why does the default on mortgage loans? Why does that have to affect me and everybody else? Why is that going to take down the entire banking system? Right. So if everything went local, stuff like that would never happen again. You would never run into those types of crises. Yeah. So there's a lot of rethinking that needs to be done. It'll be interesting to see what Trump, has in mind, because I'm sure he's got all this plan ready to roll out, and I'm excited to see what his thinking is going to lead this country to. It's going to be really, and all the business people that he has working under him, and those great minds, rethinking what this country and really what the world's going to look like. So it's that's what I'm excited for. That's what I'm looking forward to, is to see how this new system gets rolled out, what it looks like, what the average person's life is going to get, all that pressure people feel, it's going to be a big weight off people's shoulders. I feel like people live in this fear, and I understand it. And I feel like everybody's just going to live much happier, easier lives when this is all said and done. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see how that all plays out. But I do have to jet, because I have to go on a show in about 10 minutes, and I got to go do some preparation. I have some notes upstairs I got to grab.
So 2 minutes.
Seeing as you both dog lovers, I've got a 15-second video here for you.
Yeah,
I just want to say one more thing to Matt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give a plug. We're so excited that you are our top sponsor for the Awakening Summit New York. Another plug. Tickets are starting to go fast. We're going to start blowing this out on a lot of radio stations now. We're getting a lot of coverage with that to promote the event.
Right.
And yeah, and we're so excited. We got a lot of fun plans coming up for that weekend of the 25th, 26th. So anybody who is still interested, please go to the awakeningsummit.org. And we just added to the roster of speakers, we added Dave from News Trees in, and Rambo. So yeah, we're expanding with these great patriots that are going to be there.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of fun. Can't wait to meet you guys and everybody that's there. I know it's gonna be, just a great time. And these events are always fun. We just got back from Threadfest, 2 weekends ago, and that was amazing. So this is gonna be another great one. I love doing these events. These are always fun. These dogs are playing right. Come on, go this way.
All right, you want to show the video?
Yeah, it's only 15 seconds because you both dog lovers there. This is excellent.
Okay. I think I saw this somewhere.
Me too.
It's ridiculous. So funny.
Very funny.
Very cute.
All right. Well, you have a great day. We'll see you next
too, guys.
week.
Yep.
Okay.
Cheers.
Lots of love.
Thanks so much. We'll see you.
Bye. Bye.
All right. Bye.
It's always a quick fire round with Matt on, isn't it?
I know.
Excellent. Yeah, I was going to say it's really interesting at the moment watching all these No Kings rallies out there, because what we're seeing out is a very minimal turnout. The mainstream media telling everyone there's millions of people there where there's not. We're seeing all these people out there interviewing these people, and many of them have not got a clue what they're protesting, why they're there, whether they're paid activists or not. It's just brilliant watching all this, unfolding.
It really is.
And if anyone has seen it, because I think Matt just did a interview in Nick Veniamin, didn't he? I went and had a look at Nick's channel, see if it was on there. It's not on there yet.
I think it's going on now.
Yeah, I don't think it was. Oh, is he going on now?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Right,
he had us first.
Okay, right, sweet. So I went and had a look. Nick Veniamin has just done an interview, maybe in the last week or something, with Nick Alvea. And I don't know whether that's blackpilling to a massive degree or not. But go and have a watch of that, people, and tell me what you think about Nick Alvea. Because I wasn't very impressed with that interview at all. Not from Nick Veniamin. I think he held his ground very well, actually, and was posing some great questions. But yeah, Nick Alvea, I don't know what's happening now.
Yeah. I'll take a look at that. I haven't seen that, but well, there's been a lot of, shall we say, different opinions and controversy, with Nick Alvea, right? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt, this is my opinion, that he's a very talented filmmaker. He just is. He's very talented with.
I've just had a message from Joe, right? Live, hot off the press. BB is coming too. So we've got BB Maguire. Thank you, Joe. That's excellent. BB Maguire is coming to the Awakening Summit. What a crowd we're going to have there. You're muted. You're muted.
This dog. I was just saying we had her on yesterday on the show. If anybody missed it, please recatch it. I mean, usually Stu and I are very polite and we let our guests talk, but we do always interject lots of opinions. And at least for me, I found myself just enthralled with this information she was given and just like listening. And I'll have you know, I went out and bought organic flour. I have a bread maker that I've yet to use that my kids bought me last Mother's Day. Okay. That is going to be used right away because of everything BB said about this folic acid. I've already alerted anyone that I know about stop telling pregnant women to take folic acid. It's folate that they need. And I'm clearing out a lot of the plastic in my kitchen. So she had a very big effect on me yesterday.
Oh yeah, I mean, I cleared up. I haven't got a microwave oven. I've been that years ago. I don't drink out of plastic anymore. All my stuff is in glass. You know, but that is one. I love Beaver Maguire, and that is one of the favourite interviews of mine that we've done. It was amazing. I would suggest everyone goes and watch that. And Kate put in the chat, I don't watch Nick Alvear. No thanks. No, nor do I anymore. But just go and watch that, Kate. It's only 30 minutes. You will be shocked with some of the shit that he's saying. Yeah, I think Elisa's going to watch it as well, aren't you, a bit later?
Yeah.
I was like, what? Okay. All right, mate. So, yeah.
Yeah. You told me some of it, but I'm going to just go with open mind to just get my own opinion, which I'm sure is going to be very similar to a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. So tomorrow we've got Pastor Devin O'Neill. He's done a lot in the inner cities to help a lot of drug dealers, drug addicts, that are basically trying to get themselves straight and then become leaders in their community. Very touching. I saw him at the Stay Awake America event back, I think it was January, back here on Long Island. So very, very touching stories. So we're going to have him on. And then Friday, we've got our episode 8 of Red Pilling Renee at 8 a.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. GMT.
And then at 10:30 Eastern, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 4 p.m. GMT, we've got Dave and Rambo on our show.
Yeah, and we look forward to that. Now, Badger's just said here, and this cracks me up, because what do I say to you at least 2 or 3 times a week? Oh, fuck, caps lock. Yeah. But Badger's put in there, BB was wrong about nicotine, but I don't know what you're saying there, Badger, because we were talking about it, especially when we were talking about vaping at the end, and how nicotine is, from what Brian Hardis was saying, and nicotine is in tomatoes and so many things. It's good for you. A lot of people have been wearing patches since the COVID, and how it's negating spike protein and all these sorts of things. So I don't know if you misheard what BB was saying, but that's what I got from it. That, yeah, nicotine is good, which is why some of us are using products with nicotine in them. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot to learn still about a lot of this stuff. But when we think about cigarettes, it's all the other crap that they've been putting in it, and the sugar to make us addicted, and I don't even know what's in them, quite honestly. But I mean, George smokes, but we get his cigarettes from a Native American farm out on Long Island that sells organic. It's organic tobacco, I guess. I didn't do too much of a deep dive. However, what I do know is that here in New York, you're paying maybe $17, $18 US a pack. And this particular place, you can get a pack of cigarettes for $2.50. So if you're buying a carton, it's about $25. So $25 for a carton versus $17 for a pack. If you haven't kicked the habit, at least it's organic, and it's also not supporting a huge, corporation. But I'd like him to quit, because the smoke, the smell, I still don't know what the health issues. I mean, listen, the Native American Indians were smoking for thousands of years. I'm sure tobacco is not really the issue, right?
Yeah. And Brian Hardy says it's not the nicotine that is addictive. He talks about other chemicals in these cigarettes. That is that's what's addictive, but they pretend it's the nicotine that is addictive.
Well, don't they always pretend everything is a problem when it's healthy for us? Or it's not harmful, let's put it that way. And
so
then
that food pyramid upside down, RFK Jr., and away we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Okay. We'll wind it up there then. And Pastor Devin O'Neill, we'll see you tomorrow. Yep. Guys and gals. We love you all. When we go up, we go all. And get your gold and silver. And don't be playing about with your IRAs.
Exactly.
See you soon.
Your financial advisor isn't going to tell you this. Your bank won't mention it. And your 401k custodian, they're hoping you never find out. You can convert your retirement account into physical gold and silver. Real metal in your hands or stored exactly where you decide. It's called a gold IRA rollover, and it's 100% legal, 100% IRS approved. And your financial quote experts, they don't get a commission when you take control like this. Wall Street wants your money in their system, in their accounts where they control it. But physical gold, that's yours. Can't be hacked, can't be deleted, can't vanish when the market crashes. Verity Metals, we're the experts. They don't want you to call. Convert your IRA or 401k into gold and silver that you can actually hold. Call 1-888-318-7598 and quote Patriots Across the Pond.